On the whole, the reckless taxing and spending spree that Democrats want to ram through will hurt families and help China. But when you take a close look, there are some special groups of people here at home who would make out like bandits. There are specific special interests that Democrats take great pains to look after. Let me give you an example. A whole chunk of money the Democrats' proposal supposedly sets aside for patient health care would actually finance ultra-generous benefits for members of the powerful left-wing union, the SEIU. The big labor bonanza doesn't stop there. Democrats' tax plans would allow the expiration of Americans' above-the-line deduction for charitable and nonprofit donations. But in its place, they want to subsidize create a brand new subsidy for, listen to this, union dues. Tough luck for the Red Cross and your church collection plate. Washington Democrats say big labor bosses come first. Democrats also propose lavishing billions of dollars of something they call environmental and climate justice block grants. Environmental and climate justice block grants. It sounds like a gift-wrap giveaway to the universe of nonprofits and activist groups that simply exist to grift off of government grants. They'd spend billions more on tax credits to subsidize luxury purchases that are overwhelmingly made by wealthy people, like electric cars, and $8,000 electric bicycles. Then there are billions more in special subsidies and loans for the next generation of Solyndras. The gravy train doesn't stop there. When the Biden administration proposed spending $40 billion on public housing renovations, the senior senator from New York urged them to double down and spend another $40 billion exclusively on his hometown. Exclusively on his hometown. That's $40 billion to a housing authority that is apparently well known for bribery and mismanagement simply because the Democratic leader requested it. Meanwhile, in Speaker Pelosi's backyard of San Francisco, the elite trustees of a massive park and development project, oh boy, they're licking their chops. The Speaker plans to set aside $200 million of the spending spree for this park that is specifically not meant to receive taxpayer money so they can focus on, quote, environmental and social justice. Democrats' spree would also tear down longstanding bipartisan Hyde Amendment protections so they can directly fund abortion providers like Planned Parenthood with taxpayer dollars. So today's left cannot miss an opportunity to send Planned Parenthood a new slush fund. And then there's the Democrats' obsession with the so-called SALT cap. Even as our colleagues draft the biggest tax hikes in half a century, they cannot resist the concept of special tax cuts for high earners in blue states. They want to reintroduce a federal tax subsidy for living in high-tax states. One outside analysis has found that a 2-year repeal of the SALT cap would send more than, listen to this, more than $300,000 to the average household in the top 0.1% of our country. The average household in the bottom 60% would get $15. This isn't a joke. This is literally the SALT policy that Democrats want. $300 grand for the richest folks on the coast and $15 for normal families. It's the same setup everywhere you look. Special interests who are connected to the Democratic Party, oh, they'd make out like bandits. And middle-class families, they'll get the bill.
Thank you, Subcommittee Chair Davids, Ranking Member Muser, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Holly Hewells, founder and managing partner of Holloway Capital Partners. We're a small business investment company headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, with an office in Kansas City, Kansas. I am also a former chairwoman of the Small Business Investor Alliance, a national organization that represents small business funds and their investors in the lower middle market. Holloway Capital focuses on investing in small manufacturers and distributors throughout the Midwest, High Plains, Rocky Mountains, and southern regions of the United States. Our investment strategy targets small businesses with annual sales between $10 and $75 million. Holloway specializes in working with small business owners who want to sell, most commonly because they want to retire. We help these sellers align with buyer management teams to tailor an ownership transition and investment structure to each company's needs, market position, and future opportunity. With Holloway as a partner, the business has the capital and management to update technology, purchase capital equipment, and expand into new markets. Without our capital, many of these businesses would simply shut down or have their operations consolidated into another company. We are proud that we help these businesses remain independent, modernize, grow, and build a brighter future for their employees and communities. I have highlighted the success of two of our recent SBIC portfolio company investments in my written statement. I'm happy to report that the SBIC program is fulfilling its mission. As this subcommittee knows, the program had several years of suboptimal management, but thanks in part to bipartisan congressional oversight, this SBIC program is helping more small businesses than ever before. On behalf of the SBICs across the nation, thank you for your critical and ongoing oversight role. The SBIC program administered by the U.S. Small Business Administration is largely working well. But I would like to point out, as with any federal program, targeted improvements can help strengthen the program's ability to expand the benefits of free enterprise to more people and places. First, SBA's SBIC technology, information technology needs an investment upgrade. This is a $34 billion program essentially running on Microsoft Office software. SBA's limited IT technology cripples productivity and creates unnecessary taxpayer risk. SBA has an incredible amount of data, but cannot convert it into useful information to make informed decisions or to educate Congress. Second, SBIC's primary regulators are called operations analysts, who are supposed to carry 10 to 12 SBIC funds per analyst. Staffing shortages currently have individual analysts juggling as many as 50 SBICs. Regulated entities do not normally ask for more regulators, but we are. SBA needs the resources, both human and technological, to ensure SBA can run this successful program, provide necessary oversight, and remain responsive. Last, small businesses need access to more equity capital because it's the most patient form of capital. It's also a critical resource for domestic small businesses to keep U.S. businesses competitive and to strengthen supply chains. If the SBA had the tools to allow the SBIC equity investment, this would be an incredible advantage to small businesses experiencing high growth or surviving the bumps that they face. I would also like to add that since I last testified before this committee in 2009, there's been a meaningful increase in women SBIC fund managers. Our trade association has 11 women on the board, and while I was the first to chair the board, several women have also served as chair behind me, and several more are in line to serve as chair in the years to come. Thanks to Congress, the SBIC program is serving as a great program for women fund managers to thrive. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the state of the SBIC program and offer recommendations to help maintain the program's critical role to provide much needed capital to domestic small businesses. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Hules. And the chair now recognizes Ms. Palafox. You're for 5 minutes.
I appreciate the opportunity to testify before you today. I dedicate a lot of time and effort to expanding economic growth and capital access. I founded 2045 Ventures in 2020 to fill persistent gaps in the market for underrepresented founders and invest in sectors that will drive our future, including climate tech, fintech, and health tech. I serve on the National Venture Capital Association Board of Directors, and I am a founding board member of Latinx VC. As a founding board member at Latinx VC, I focus on creating opportunities for emerging fund managers like me. I was born and raised in San Diego, California, and moved to Los Angeles to study economics at the University of Southern California. I spent 15 years at Dimensional Fund Advisors, a global asset management firm, and gained deep appreciation for capital markets. I left Dimensional in 2011 to pursue an executive MBA at Berkeley Haas. There I was immersed in venture capital and startups and recognized the industry's increasing importance to our economy. After graduating from Berkeley Haas in 2014, I wanted to launch a fund to invest in underrepresented founders, but I was too early. The ecosystem supporting women and underrepresented founders and emerging managers wasn't as robust as it is today. So instead, I joined 2 business partners and launched a venture capital fund, an accelerator, and an innovation lab to invest in hardware technology startups. Our firm reached entrepreneurs in 70 countries and 33 states. We invested in 22 startups across sectors, including ed tech, digital therapeutics, climate tech, and space tech. And some of our startups were beneficiaries of government grants and R&D scale-up manufacturing. In October 2020, I launched 2045 Capital to fill gaps in the market. 2045's thesis is that diverse teams outperform, a view supported by data. The data shows that startups with ethnically diverse teams return 30% more capital to investors, and startups with at least one female founder outperform all male teams by 63%. And a quarter of all our US science and technology firms are founded by immigrants. So 2045's objective is to invest in startups where at least one founder is a woman, an immigrant, or a founder of color. So in terms of the state of venture capital, it continues to be a powerful industry. The most recent third quarter 2021 PitchBook and NVCA Venture Monitor reports that venture capital-backed startups are at the top of the public markets. VC-backed IPOs accounted for more than 2/3 of the total US listings year to date. In addition, 2021 is on a track record for another breaking year for venture investment, exit activity, and fundraising with a total of $238.7 billion. The VC ecosystem is thriving for most, but not for women and minorities. This inequity is unsustainable when you consider the changing demographics of our nation. The census predicts that by 2045, there won't be a racial majority in the United States, which is the case in 5 states today. Already, there isn't a racial majority for youth under 18, and 25% of Gen Z are Latinx. In LA, where I reside, 45% of the population is Latinx, but only 2% of VC capital investment goes to Black female founders and 3% to Latina and founders. Furthermore, there's only less than 1% of female check writers like myself in Los Angeles. So programs such as SBIC can help women and underrepresented fund managers grow their presence, activate more investment into startups, and generate other benefits to society. Women and underrepresented managers are more than 2 times as likely to invest in female and underrepresented fund managers or entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Palafox. We will return to you for questions after we yield to Mr. Michelson for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman and Ranking Member, and thank you, distinguished members of the subcommittee. My name is John Michelson, and I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Midwest Growth Partners, located in West Des Moines, Iowa, with an additional office in Omaha, Nebraska. Midwest Growth Partners is a USDA-licensed rural business investment company, or an RBIC, and we raise dollars from the private sector to make succession planning and growth investments in food and agricultural, manufacturing, and distribution businesses in rural communities across the U.S. Like the SBIC program, RBICs make investments in small businesses where institutional capital is scarce, particularly in non-coastal communities. Our investors include members of the Farm Credit System, rural electric co-ops, ag trade organizations such as the Iowa Corn Growers, and commercial banks. Starting with 7 after our first acquisition in 2014, Midwest Growth Partners portfolio companies have over 2,600 employees today, employed in and often living in rural communities. These jobs all pay above the living wage, provide benefits, and generated more than $7 million in federal, local, and state withholding taxes in 2020. While we are proud of the impact these portfolio company jobs provide, we're just as proud knowing that many of the jobs provide off-farm income, allowing one spouse to remain farming while the other spouse secures benefits for the family. Since inception, Midwest Growth Partners has grown the employment at its portfolio companies by 25% on average from the date of its original investment by making 19 investments in rural areas, totaling more than $100 million of much-needed private capital. A real-life example of Midwest Growth Partners capital at work is our investment in Fast Ag Solutions, located in Windham, Minnesota, population 4,400. Fast Ag manufactures sprayers and liquid fertilizer applicators. Midwest Growth Partners partnered with the Fast Ag management team to purchase the company in the fall of 2020, and we've grown full-time employment from 52 to 73 since then. This type of economic development in rural areas would not be possible without programs like the RBIC, but more can be done. Examples include providing support for the Rural Capital Access Act, which would enable RBICs to utilize leftover funds from the SBIC program, the creation of a micro SBIC license, which will create a more inclusive pool of talented entrepreneurs to invest in underserved communities, the creation of an SBIC working group to increase the number of SBIC applicants, specifically those located in underserved communities and under-licensed states, and finally, the creation of an SBA Office of Rural Affairs. Unfortunately, all the success that has been made and the promise of the critical programs mentioned above could be muted because of current issues facing small businesses. PPP was a critical lifeline during COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, but now businesses are facing a new set of challenges in 2021. Our portfolio companies are facing 30 to 40% price increases in raw materials used to make goods, and that's if they can even secure the materials at all. Supply chain constraints are having a direct impact on sales and profit margins, which constrict the ability to reinvest in our business and hire more employees. The prospect of higher taxes of all forms is delaying business decisions necessary for long-term business planning. Midwest Growth Partners has experienced these challenges daily in the work we do in rural communities with small businesses. On the pass-through income tax side, these proposals aren't impacting only billionaires, but small business owners who, when faced with the prospect of a tax increase, will forego the hiring of additional workers, even 1 or 2, or an investment in capital goods, such as something as simple as a forklift. Possible increases of capital gains rates or to the 1202 code have already created unnatural business outcomes as owners and investors accelerate or indefinitely delay decisions related to their personal succession planning and growth investment strategy. Possible changes to the carried interest model will disincentivize fund managers from making investments in all areas, including rural and other underserved communities. Businesses in rural areas and small businesses generally already face a scarcity of capital access, negatively impacting the lives of millions of Americans. As we near the hopeful end of the COVID-19 pandemic, these businesses are optimistic to grow and create prosperity for their employees and communities. Small and rural business owners and investors are used to facing headwinds. No day is ever easy. But adding additional regulatory and cost burdens is not in their best interest and definitely not in the best interest of the communities they operate in and the millions of employees who provide goods and services which make our country the land of opportunity. Thank you, and I would welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Michelson. I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes for my first question. Ms. Hughes, your fund invests primarily in manufacturing companies throughout the Midwest, including from one of your offices in Overland Park, Kansas, which is in the 3rd District. This committee passed a section of the Build Back. I can take my mask off. I've been recognized to speak. This committee passed a section of the Build Back Better Act, which included funds for the SBIC program to provide capital for underserved markets and small manufacturers. Can you speak a bit to the challenges that small manufacturers face in accessing capital and what more the SBIC program could be doing for these small businesses? I know you made a few recommendations related to information technology, the number of operations analysts, and equity investments. And I'd be curious if you want to go into any more detail about that.
Well, we invest primarily as you said, in manufacturers and distributors in the middle part of the country. And we really see two broad trends. Companies are coming back from COVID and they're in need of growth capital to respond to the marketplace. And as Mr. Michelson said, there's challenges with regard to that with employees and supply chain. But then there's also this acceleration of baby boomers who have, late stage businesses, or they're late in their career, and they're looking for what they're going to do with their businesses in order to retire. So we're managing the portfolio companies that we have, as well as the substantial amount of need for capital, which is, there's a very strong demand for capital in the market for both growth and for transition, as people are trying to get in front of any kind of capital gains tax change that may happen in the future. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and then I'm curious, just a quick follow-up, and then I'll move on to the next question about the ways that because the pandemic has exacerbated various issues, when we're thinking about some of the considerations, whether it's the capital gains, this sort of thing, how has the pandemic either highlighted or maybe brought to the forefront the way that folks are thinking about that?
Well, the pandemic, as I agree with Mr. Michelson, the PPP was an incredible resource to keep our companies and many companies viable through the pandemic. Now that they've survived that, the next big issue is the supply chain and lack of talent in the market, lack of employees in the talent and in the marketplace. So I would say we are probably the biggest struggle of most of our companies at this point. And we've got companies in places like Wichita, Kansas, and Montgomery, Alabama. These are small market type businesses that are really struggling to find, fix supply chain issues and find talent, employees.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then I guess my next question really has to do with, we held a hearing in the last Congress to review the management of the SBIC program, and had heard a lot of concerns about delayed processing and inefficiency. And I'm curious if you've seen in the last 2 years any improvements, or what your experience and what you've seen with that program.